And Money Matters. My name is Joe Pereira. Today we're going to be talking about something that is a pet peeve of many parents. Parents who wish that their kids were outdoors more and getting lots of exercise. Parents who hope that their children do better in school, and parents who pray every day that their children will not become crippled for life with carpal tunnel syndrome at age 18. We're talking about video games. Video games is something that touches on both of our themes, mind and money. It touches on money because it is the parent who has to reach into his or her pocket for 60 bucks every time a birthday comes around, every time a Christmas celebration comes around, or a Hanukkah, or even sometimes when a kid graciously agrees to clean up his room. Video games are big money. To give you an idea of how big it is, Americans spend $10 billion a year. Last year we spent $10 billion going to the movies. But for video games, we spend $25.1 billion. That includes the games that we play in our living rooms, as well as on our computers and our handheld systems, and also our tablets like iPhones and all of that. It is now really, really big money. But it also touches on our minds, and it touches on our minds in a very real way. And I guess we're going to be spending a lot of the time today talking about how it affects our minds. If any of you parents out there are like me in any way, you probably view video games as something like some sort of flesh-eating bacteria that attacks the brain in less time than you can say joystick. And so we're going to have a little bit of fun today. You probably see the glint in my eye. I would like to rename this show, instead of Mind and Money Matters, at least for this time, I'd like to rename the show The Revenge of the Fuddy-Duddy Parent. And we have here our guests who will be on the other side of the fence with me. We're very fortunate to have them with me. Let me introduce you to them. At the top of the seating here is Kuba Saltashak. Kuba is a student at here is Kuba Saltashak. Kuba is a student at Moses Brown School, and he's going to be co-hosting the show with me. When he grows up, he wants to be a filmmaker. And he's already going to film school during the summer at Universal Studios to get a head start on some of the people he'll be competing with who want to become perhaps the next Steven Spielberg. And welcome to the show, Kuba.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for having me.
And the next guest we have here is Benjamin Gogol. Benjamin is a student at Emerson College, where he's on the dean's list, and he aspires to someday soon become a video game journalist. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me.
And last but not least is Dylan Hughes. He is also, like Kuba, a high honors student at Thayer Academy, and when he grows up, he wants to be a doctor and probably become a heart surgeon of some sort. The three guests today we have two things in common. Actually, three things in common. One, they're all good students. Two, they have been known to spend hours on end playing video games. And three, they're all good looking. And so, thank you very much for coming on the show with us. We want to get into this subject, and we can't think of anybody better to talk about this than the actual gamers, the people who actually experience playing the game. And we could talk forever to adults and to professors and to sociologists about this stuff, but they don't really know what's going on in your head, and this is a chance for us to get into our heads. First of all, I'd like to show everybody the most popular game that is on the market today. The game is called Call of Duty, and in 2011, it rang up at the cash register something to the tune of $775 million. Now, in the video game business, and I've covered this as a reporter many years ago, And in the video game business, anything that hits $30 million in retail sales is a hit. Now this thing, Call of Duty, is $775 million blockbuster. We'd like to try to find out what is so unusual about this game, and all three of you are very familiar with this game. Let's take a clip. Let's look at a clip of actually how this game is played. It's a promo that's put out by one of the companies that makes it. Can we roll the clip, please?
Gracias, señor.
Okay, now there you have it. We saw basically a virtual reality setting. What I saw was a guy with a gun, a first-person shooter as they call it, going from room to room and running through the corridors, shooting at zombies, I think. And he's just shooting at them. When they get shot, they die, they fall down on the ground. What's the thrill of it? He just runs around, you know, aimlessly doing this over and over again. Koopa, have you played this game?
Yeah, and I was gonna say he should probably get to the elevator soon.
Okay.
But no, I understand from your viewpoint. It looks like he's just running around and just shooting random things. But you know, when I see that, I can tell you that there is a strategy to what he's doing, and it involves, you know, how am I going to survive these next few rounds, and how are my teammates going to help me through this?
And what is the strategy? Do you develop it on the run, or is there a strategy that you can study and it becomes a science, so to speak, that you accumulate in your mind and you suddenly become a better Call of Duty player?
I mean, well, personally for me, I mean, I play with my friends and you kind of figure out, all right, you cover this wall and I'll cover this wall. But it's kind of, you know, problem solving on the go, and that's how I do it. But I know there's people that have strategies. They go online, make YouTube videos, and they'll put them up and say, you want someone here, and that's how you'll get higher up in the levels.
Okay. How long do you play it for?
Maybe, you know, usually an hour, or maybe an hour and a half.
Okay. Ben, do you play this game?
Yeah, I've played at least every, major installment in the series since it first really got big back in, 2007, even though it's actually been around since, 2003. You have to understand that part of what made it so big back in 2007 was the fourth game in the series was the first time it literally took the shooting into, the present-day Iraq War conflict. And at the time it came out, back then, all the major shooters were, stuck in this creatively bankrupt World War II setting, where it felt like World War II was pretty much the only genre of shooter that was going to truly dominate it for years, which is why, in addition to the fun and the strategy Kuba here mentioned, just the very setting and the context gave it a real immediacy and a sense of fresh air that a lot of other shooters didn't really have at the time.
And so making it more Iraq-like is what really elevated it to a level of interest that is now a blockbuster?
It certainly added a level of immersion and realism that you couldn't really get with the World War II stuff, because you had to go off all of the stuff that was already existing and had already been done to death, and accounts from eyewitnesses who certainly aren't getting younger. But with it being in the modern setting, you obviously had a lot more creative feedback from actual army personnel that was involved, a lot more real life events that were being factored into it. it just sort of resulted in a greater, more thorough attention to detail, which also helped set it apart from the pack when it first went modern.
So you guys play a whole bunch of games. You play sports games, action games. I guess this is, should I call it violent games? Why is Call of Duty so much better than all of the other games that you play? For instance, you know, FIFA, the soccer game that a lot of people play, a lot of kids play. Why is this so much better than, let's say, a soccer game or a basketball game?
Well, I think that the reason I like it is because you can unlock achievements and you can get better at it. You can make your character better, and you can upgrade yourself. Whereas with sports games, you can't really do that. You can keep playing and you can get better at it, but you can't actually unlock anything in the game. And I like that.
So unlocking secrets, unlocking doors. Is that what you mean? Finding new worlds.
Yeah, more like finding, unlocking guns and stuff. Yeah.
Oh, okay. There's a whole arsenal of guns you can use, right?
Yeah.
It's unbelievable, and they're very realistic. Is that an appealing aspect of this game? That there are all of these, you know, the M16s and AK-44s and 45s, and is that something that appeals to you guys?
Well, definitely. It's been one of the selling points of the Call of Duty series from the beginning, that everything was designed to be as authentic as possible, especially right down to how the weapons look and how they feel and how they sound, because little details like that are the difference between games that have just a high budget but don't really do anything interesting with the technology, and the ones that have high production value, where you can actually tell that a lot of the resources and the money were being put to good use.
Now, this is a game that you guys play now, but many, many years ago, when you first got into the world of video games, you were probably playing with Mario, Super Mario Brothers. Tell us a little bit how you got into video games and how long you've been playing. Kuba, how did you get into video games? What fascinated you in the first place?
I know when I was little, I played like on computer, like those like little kids games with the learning games basically. And that fascinated me, and then I found out that there was like the Nintendo 64 and Mario, and I remember I think around 6 I probably got Nintendo 64 and I was playing Mario. I do recall that like I wasn't playing the objective, I was just kind of walking around the world and just kind of taking everything in, and sometimes I would just do kind of these like small actions or whatever. But I found it very interesting, and I think it was just this amazing thing because you're kind of able to walk into this whole new world that you weren't able to before with maybe, I don't know, like picture books or something like that.
And so was your best toy, video games were your best toys? For instance, at Christmas, if you got a video game, you got really excited, and if maybe you got an action figure or something, you weren't all that excited?
Maybe. I think back then yes, but now I recently kind of like realized that I love filmmaking, and I honestly probably would say that if I got a camera or some kind of editing software or a tripod or something like that, that'd excite me a lot more kind of than a video game.
Than a video game. So you've grown up. You're growing up, and you're
yeah.
a very serious filmmaker. So yeah, that's understandable. Ben, how did you get into video games? By accident or by design?
Well, kind of like how Kubo got started, I was sort of born and raised in like a bunch of those old learning titles that were up for computers back then, but probably the most pivotal experience for me was back in 1994 when I was like just 3 years old. And I don't remember why my mom got this for me, but I remember she got me like a Sega Genesis with like a copy of Sonic the Hedgehog, and I just remember really wanting to get home and play to see what all the fuss was about. And after like spending the last night just trying to figure out how to make the thing work, and I actually got to turn it on and experience it for the first time, it was just like a big revelation to see like this kind of technology even existing. It just sort of immediately drew me in that I could actually like, you know, be holding a controller and just having this sense of real tactile response that I honestly would have never gotten from a lot of those old point-and-click adventure games on the PC. There was just like this real sense of speed and mobility that really just kind of got me hooked on it, and by proxy kind of led me down this path to being like a gamer practically my whole life ever since. I've never looked back.
Do you consider yourself a gamer now?
Well, I've always considered myself one in a sense.
How do you define a gamer?
Well, the thing is, the term gamer itself is incredibly open and subjective. Practically anyone can be it, but there are definitely certain levels of it. Since I've been playing it for basically my whole life, I'm what would be considered a hardcore, someone who's like incredibly passionate about the medium, puts it before anything else, but not to an unreasonable degree, and who definitely is heavily invested in it the same way as like a film connoisseur would be heavily invested in films, or a bookworm would be into books. And then like on the other side, you've got like the casual gamers who don't necessarily like not care about it, but don't really put in nearly like as much of a legitimate commitment to understanding the intricacies, the history, and whatnot. The kind of people who say spend their time playing Angry Birds, like on the train on the way to work, would be a decent example of this.
So can you be a gamer and still have a regular life, go to school, get good grades, and be a gamer, or do you have to sacrifice a little bit of that gaming aspect of your life in order to be able to get on the dean's list or high honors?
Well, life is nothing if not making a bunch of tough choices, and you know, me having to sacrifice a lot of the gaming time I had as a kid was, you know, something that I had to do. But then again, it would be like, you know, that film kid who spends all his time watching movies having to cut back on his movie watching because it was going to cut into the studying time for his exams. But the way I did it was that instead of turning it into a distraction, I used it as my motivation by planning on pursuing a career in this field, and thereby motivating myself by believing that this stuff, while it wouldn't necessarily help me out directly, it would definitely be a step towards achieving a successful career in a field that's essentially been my motivation my whole life. I basically turned it from a negative to a positive.
Now, I'm very curious about what happens in your brain when you're playing video games, because that's one of the reasons that I'm asking these questions, because I don't understand it myself. But like you say, you get into a completely different world, you get into a whole different reality. And so what I did for fun over the weekend was videotape you, Kuba, and you, Dylan, playing video games. And I was kind of watching your facial expressions and your body language and your levels of your concentration. So I want to share this with our viewers. Let's take a look at this roll-in that we did where Kuba and Dylan are playing the most popular game, Call of Duty. Now, complete concentration on your part. And Kuba, I noticed that you were looking at the video at the TV screen, and you were just moving your thumbs without even looking at it. It's like me typing, or like the average person typing. You know exactly where all of the keys are. You know you were totally engrossed in this. And after I finished taping, I gave you guys the opportunity to stop playing, but you continued to play. Tell me what was going on in your mind at that time, and what was so interesting about that moment.
I'd say that probably I enjoy playing Call of Duty Call of Duty because it's kind of a way to like blow off steam. I think in a way for me personally, is that it's kind of relaxing and it's fun and it's like the way I can explain this to you is kind of Call of Duty kind of reminds me of playing Sudoku or any kind of game where you have to use strategy because you might see it as kind of stupid game that you just point and run around and shoot. But you're really trying to think of like, where am I gonna go now? Where am I going next? What am I gonna do? What things am I gonna use? Or how am I gonna get the objective done?
And so you were it was an escapism for you at that particular time, and you didn't want to leave that.
For me, it'd be like watching a good movie, kind of like interactive storytelling.
Right. You remember what your thoughts were at the time?
I was pretty much completely engrossed in the game, and that's kind of what I like about it, that you kind of forget everything and your one goal and the only thing on your mind is doing something in the game, and it makes it kind of like a drug in a way that you forget everything, and it's just a real way to blow off steam, like Kuba said.
Okay. So when I rudely interrupted you and said you can stop playing, I was interrupting a drug high in a sense.
Yeah, I don't know.
An adrenaline high.
I don't know. Just not adrenaline, but it wasn't really a high either. You just forget everything and you're focused on that. It's not actually a drug where you're out of it completely.
Escape from reality.
Yeah.
What's the longest? Be honest. What's the longest you've ever played in one session?
I would say maybe 7 or 8 hours, maybe. But
wow.
But that would be like, like I did this with like my friends. When Call of Duty comes out, we have like this kind of like fiesta where we kind of sit and we play maybe for that amount of time. But it's difficult. I mean, once it's kind of like watching 8 movies in a row or something like that. After a point, you kind of you can't anymore.
7 or 8 hours. Ben, how long have you played in one sitting?
Well, probably the longest I can remember was like a few years ago in March of 2008 when I just got home with like the latest copy of Super Smash Bros. Brawl, and I was just so excited to get through the single player mode that I just went home, popped it in, and played it through for at least like 7 to 9 hours straight in one sitting. Give or take an hour, because it was literally right through daylight savings, because I lost an hour of sleep that I probably wouldn't have had otherwise. But it was definitely like a good marathon binge, well spent.
Wow. What dedication. Dylan, how long, you wanted to say how long you've played?
I'd say 6 or 7 hours, but mostly it's more with friends and stuff. I don't usually play alone for more than 3 hours, maybe, at most, maybe, because it gets kind of lonely, and I'd rather be doing something outside or playing some music or something.
I agree. Yeah. I'd play more with friends and maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours by myself max.
So it's kind of a social thing that keeps you going also.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to get into the nitty gritty of this stuff, because this is where it might get a little bit dicey for you, because last month I was following the trial of Anders Breivik. It's a Norwegian name that I'm not all that familiar with. Anders Breivik. You know who he is. He was the serial killer, mass murderer. Last summer he went into the Oslo government center and killed 8 people there, and then after that he left to go to a camp for the children of politicians in Norway, and he killed 69 people there. And before he went in, he went on this rampage. He said that he carefully he played Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 2, to look at how the scopes work, and he also looked at how at some of the strategies that were used, the tactics that were used, so that he would be able to pull this stunt off. Killing 77 people is not an easy stunt, but he wanted to kill a lot of people before he would actually get caught or arrested, and Modern Warfare helped him. And he said this in testimony in front of a packed courthouse in Oslo last month. I was really very, very upset by that kind of testimony, because I'm a parent and I'm allowing my children to, to do the same thing that Anders is doing. And so, let me ask you this. Do you feel that video game incites you to violence? Does video game desensitize you? We've got a few minutes left. Just let's go down the line. Kuba, does it do anything to your psyche?
No, absolutely. I never to like. You can 99% of people can tell what real violence is between video game violence, fake violence, and for me actually video games helps me blow off steam, like I said. So I'd say that it doesn't incite violence, and I kind of feel that that's a bad representation, because that's kind of one person that is an outlier of the rest that took this medium and made it into some kind of violent form.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at the three of us. I mean, we've been playing Call of Duty and video games in general our whole lives, but have we ever killed or physically assaulted anyone? Exactly. These are the kind of things that tend to be on a case-by-case basis, and if the parents are really that concerned about the impact it could positively have, then really they need to be taking the precautions themselves to prevent them from having access to that material in the first place. Because if they're trying to criticize the games after the fact, and that they let them have that access to that stuff in the first place, it just doesn't make sense. Because that would be like accidentally letting your kid get into that yard with the sign that says, "Do not enter, beware of dog," and then suing the owner of the pit bull because he ripped off your kid's leg. It just doesn't make any logical sense. If you're really that concerned, then just don't let them have it in the first place if you don't think that they can learn to be responsible themselves with that kind of exposure to that kind of content. And it's no different from the kid who shoots up his school after being exposed to say a bunch of violent movies or violent music. I'm not saying the potential doesn't exist, but it is in no way greater than being exposed to violence in any other format just because you can control it with a bunch of buttons and a couple of joysticks. Because, hey, even TVs have a remote and an on and off switch.
Dylan, does it have any impact on you? The way you feel your emotions, your nervousness? Does it make you more aggressive, more jittery?
I'd say no. It doesn't. No violence really. I might be a little bit more on edge afterwards, but nothing extreme like violence. Definitely not.
So none of you are going to go out and do what Anders did. Well, that's good to know. We've scrutinized your video game playing habits, and we adults are also guilty in our own way. We look for our own adrenaline highs. We pay tons of money to go see professional sports. It's basically to get an adrenaline rush, and we go gambling, and we do drugs, and we do all kinds of other stuff that also tries to in our own way emulate what you do, which is to seek thrills. And we don't really want to cast aspersions at you, but we just like to understand a little bit about video games and what goes on in your mind when you play it. Thank you so much for being with us. It was very enlightening for me. And we'd just like to say, if you have any comments about video games and you would like to contact us in any way, you can reach us on Facebook, where our program is called Mind and Money Matters. Thank you for watching.